I knew something was wrong the moment my foot hit something soft on the ground. At first, I thought it was trash or a pile of clothes someone had dumped near the alley behind Franklin Avenue. But when I looked down and saw expensive leather shoes sticking out from a dark coat, my heart kicked hard against my ribs. This was not trash. This was a person. And once I knelt beside him, I realized it was a boy. A kid who couldn't be more than 14. His skin looked pale under the dim streetlight, almost gray like he had been drained of all warmth. I slid my freezing hands under his face to turn him gently. My fingers were shaking from the cold, but the moment I felt his chilled skin, a different kind of fear shot straight through me. His breathing was shallow, but at least he was alive. He wore a private school uniform under a cashmere coat. Clothes like that didn't belong in my neighborhood. My name is Harper, and I'm a broke nursing student who works double shifts at Joe's Diner. My coat is thin, my tips barely cover bus fare, and my life is far from luxury. But right then, none of that mattered. All I saw was a kid who needed help. I searched his pockets for some kind of ID, hoping for a clue. Instead, I found a sleek smartphone, way too nice for this part of town. When I pressed the screen, only one emergency contact popped up. Dad. I hesitated. Calling strangers at night was never smart. But leaving a boy like this alone was not an option. My breath trembled as I pressed the call button. The phone rang only once before a deep voice answered. Nicholas. This isn't Nicholas, I said quickly. My name is Harper. I found a boy unconscious on Franklin Avenue. I think this is his father's number. The silence that followed felt thick, like the man on the other end wasn't just listening. He was calculating. When he finally spoke, his voice held a sharp edge. Is he breathing? Yes, I answered, but he's pale and cold. I think it might be hypoglycemia. I'm a nursing student and... Do not move him. His voice cut straight through me, cold and commanding. I'm 10 minutes away. Stay where you are. Keep him warm. Quote. The call ended before I could respond. I didn't know who this man was, but something in his voice made the hairs at the back of my neck rise. Still, I stayed. I wrapped my coat around the boy the best I could, rubbing his arms to keep circulation going. Snow drifted down lightly, gathering in my hair as the silence stretched around us. 8 minutes later, a black SUV rolled up to the curb, smooth and silent. 3 men stepped out. They moved with purpose, like trained soldiers, all dressed in dark coats with earpieces. The third man walked toward me, tall and sharp-featured with eyes that were far too intense for someone I'd never met. He knelt beside the boy, barely glancing at me. Mr. Blackstone, he said, though I wasn't sure if it was his name or a warning. You said hypoglycemia. Yes, I answered, trying not to shrink under his stare. He needs fast treatment. In one swift motion, he pulled a small medical kit from his coat and worked with practiced skill. He told me Nicholas had type 1 diabetes and had forgotten his emergency kit. His voice stayed flat, but the look in his eyes when his son opened his eyes was something close to relief. Nicholas blinked slowly. Dad? You will explain this later, Mr. Blackstone said, steady but not unkind. When the boy was finally stable, I stepped back, ready to leave. My job here was done. And honestly, I didn't want to linger around these men any longer than I had to. But when I turned, his voice stopped me instantly. Wait. The word held power, the kind that froze my feet to the ground. He stood slowly, looking at me in a way that felt far too direct. I wasn't used to being studied like that, like someone was peeling away every layer of my life with their eyes. Thank you for helping my son, he said. Anyone would have, I replied, though deep down I knew it wasn't true. Not in this neighborhood, not at this hour. He reached into his coat and pulled out a card. I don't need money, I said quickly, stepping back. My pride rose fast, the way it always did when someone tried to hand me help I didn't earn. This is not a reward, he said. It is an opportunity. Quote. He held out the heavy business card. Just a number, no name, no company, only a silver embossing that looked expensive enough to buy my month's rent. Call tomorrow morning, he said. His voice softened just enough to make it even more dangerous. "I have a proposition for you." Before I could respond, the SUV pulled away with Nicholas inside. I was left alone with the falling snow, the quiet street, and a card in my hand that felt like it carried the weight of a future I wasn't ready for. That night I stared at the card for hours. Something told me calling that number would change my life in ways I couldn't begin to imagine. But when morning came, I dialed it anyway. And that was the moment everything began. The mansion looked nothing like the world I came from. The kind of stone walls, tall iron gates, and security cameras you only see in movies stood in front of me as I stepped out of the taxi. My heart was beating way too fast, and for a moment, I wondered if I should just turn around and go home. But then I remembered the card in my hand and the voice on the phone telling me to arrive exactly 2 hours after the call. A guard checked my ID, then the gates opened without a sound. The driveway curved around a fountain that probably cost more than everything I had ever owned. I saw my reflection in the water, my worn coat and tired eyes looking even more out of place in such a perfect world. Inside, the house was warm and quiet. A woman led me through long hallways until we reached what looked like a study. Dark wood shelves covered an entire wall, filled with books I knew I would never be able to afford. A huge desk stood near the windows, and behind it, Mr. Blackstone waited, looking calm and unreadable. "Miss Watson," he said, standing as if he had expected me to arrive exactly at that second. "Please, sit." I sat carefully, afraid to break something. He didn't waste time. "My son has a rare form of type 1 diabetes," he said. "His condition changes quickly. It is dangerous. I need someone who can respond fast." "You want me to be his nurse?" I asked. "Medical monitor," he corrected. "You will live here. You'll attend his school events, watch his glucose levels, and make sure he follows his protocol." My jaw dropped when he told me the salary. It was more money than I had ever seen in my life. Enough to pay off my student loans. Enough for rent, for food, for everything. "But why me?" I asked. "You could hire someone with more training." His eyes stayed locked on mine in a way that made me forget how to breathe. "Because you did not run away last night," he said. "You did not call for money. You acted with instinct and courage. That is harder to find than a degree." Before I could respond, the door burst open. Nicholas rushed in, looking healthy but furious. "I don't need a babysitter," he said. "Dad, this is stupid." "This is necessary," Mr. Blackstone replied. He didn't raise his voice, but the air in the room tightened. Nicholas glared at me like I had ruined his life on purpose. "What? She's supposed to follow me everywhere? My whole school will think I'm a kid." Quote, "You will treat Miss Watson with respect," his father said sharply. "She saved your life." Nicholas rolled his eyes and stormed out, and the door slammed behind him. My stomach twisted. "He hates me." "He is 14, Mr. Blackstone said. "He hates many things." I almost laughed, but something about the way he looked at me made the sound die in my chest. His gaze wasn't cold anymore. It was something else. Something sharper. "Do you accept the position?" he asked. I thought of my tiny apartment, the rent I couldn't pay, the double shifts, the future that was slipping away from me. "Yes," I said softly. "I accept." By the end of the week, I moved into a room bigger than my entire apartment. The staff offered polite smiles, but watched me with curiosity. I wasn't sure if they saw me as a guest or someone who needed protection. Mrs. Chen, the housekeeper, helped me unpack. "Mr. Blackstone may look harsh," she said, folding my clothes. "But everything he does is for Nicholas." I nodded, though I wasn't sure if I believed it. Nicholas avoided me the first few days. When he finally talked, it was only because his glucose crashed after gym class. He tried to hide it, but I caught it fast and helped stabilize him before it got worse. He stared at me afterward, confused. "Why didn't you call my dad?" "Because you didn't want him to know," I said. "And because you're not a baby." Something softened in his expression, like he wasn't used to being understood. A few nights later, I helped him with homework in the kitchen. That's when I overheard two security men whispering about a shipment at the harbor and trouble with someone named Donovan. The way they spoke made my stomach tighten. When I looked at Nicholas, he shook his head. "You don't ask questions in this house," he said quietly. Dad's business is complicated. The next morning, I found Mr. Blackstone in the hallway, adjusting his cufflinks. His knuckles were bruised like he had punched something hard. "Rough night?" I asked before I could stop myself. His eyes lifted to mine, and for a second, something passed between us. Something unspoken. "Standard business," he said. I didn't press. I didn't need to. I had already seen enough to know this man was more dangerous than anyone I had ever met. But I also noticed something else. When he talked about Nicholas, his voice changed. When he looked at me, his eyes softened. Just a little. I wasn't sure what that meant yet. But I knew one thing. I had stepped into a world full of rules, shadows, and secrets. And somehow, I was right in the center of it. 6 weeks passed before I realized how much my life had changed. I woke up every morning in a room with tall windows and soft sheets. I ate breakfast in a kitchen where chefs made meals that looked like they belonged on magazine covers. I walked hallways watched by cameras and guarded by men whose eyes never stopped moving. I monitored Nicholas at school, at home, during sports, and at night when his numbers dipped. And all that time, I tried not to think about the man who controlled this house, Mr. Blackstone. James. I never called him that out loud, but hearing the staff use it made something strange twist in my chest. One warm afternoon, I drove Nicholas back from his endocrinologist appointment. At first, everything seemed normal, but after a few blocks, I noticed a black sedan behind us. Every turn we took, it took. Every stoplight we hit, it hit. My pulse jumped. "Nicholas," I said calmly, "text your father's team. We have a tail." 3 cars back, black Audi. He didn't panic. That scared me most. "This isn't the first time," he said. Minutes later, 2 SUVs appeared from nowhere and slid between us and the sedan. When we reached the mansion, the car was gone. But the fear stayed with me. That evening, Mr. Blackstone called me into his study. The room was dark except for the screens showing security footage. "You noticed the tail immediately," he said. "Most people wouldn't." "I grew up in a rough neighborhood," I said. "You learn how to survive." He studied me quietly, like he was fitting puzzle pieces together. When his eyes met mine, the air felt heavy, charged. "The Donovan family is hosting a charity gala," he said. "I want you and Nicholas to attend with me." Quote. My brows rose before I could stop myself. "Aren't they your rivals?" He smiled, small and sharp. "Officially, no. Unofficially, yes." "And you want me there because?" "Because Donovan wants to know Nicholas's medical vulnerabilities," he said. "Your presence sends him a message that I'm not hiding anything." "So you want to use me as a shield," I said quietly. He didn't deny it. In fact, he nodded. "You understand power better than most." 3 days later, a gown arrived for me, deep emerald silk, soft as air. I had never worn anything that beautiful in my life. At the gala, I felt eyes on me from the moment we entered. The ballroom sparkled with chandeliers, polished floors, and people dressed in gowns worth more than my yearly income. I stayed close to Nicholas, who seemed tense the entire night. Michael Donovan approached us at dinner. His smile was warm, but his eyes were cold. "And who is this lovely young woman?" he asked, looking at me far too long. "My personal assistant," James said smoothly, his hand touching the small of my back. "She's studying nursing." Quote. The warmth of his hand lingered even after he moved away, but Nicholas wasn't doing well. His hands shook, his breathing quickened. When I checked his glucose monitor, the number made my stomach drop. I leaned close to James. "He needs air. Fast." We stepped outside onto the terrace, and Nicholas collapsed within seconds. His skin turned clammy, his breathing grew shallow. I went into full medical mode, applying glucose gel and stabilizing him as quickly as I could. James dropped to his knees beside him. For the first time since I met him, fear shattered through his perfect control. "What happened?" he asked. Stress, I said. His adrenaline burned through his glucose. Nicholas slowly opened his eyes. James exhaled shakily, brushing a hand through his son's hair. Then I felt a presence behind us. Michael Donovan stood just inside the terrace doors, watching, studying, calculating. He saw everything. My stomach twisted. He knows, I whispered. James's jaw clenched. Get Nicholas to the car, now. We left the gala in silence. Nicholas slept in the back seat while James made phone calls in a voice so cold it made my skin crawl. When we arrived home, he carried Nicholas inside. I waited in the foyer, feeling the weight of something dangerous building around me. Minutes later, he returned. Donovan will spread what he saw, he said. He will use Nicholas's condition to make me look weak. I swallowed hard. You've spent years hiding it. Because vulnerability is a weapon in my world, he said. And my wife was killed because someone used her against me. His voice broke on the last word. I had never seen him look human until that moment. We were both quiet until the door burst open and his security chief rushed in. Sir, he said urgently. Donovan's men accessed Miss Watson's old apartment building last night. They questioned her neighbors. My heart dropped. My old neighborhood. The people who had been kind to me when I had nothing. They're investigating me, I whispered. James looked at me with a seriousness that made the air shift. You are connected to me now, he said. That makes you a target? A cold wave rolled through my stomach. Everything I thought I had control over slipped through my fingers. You can leave, he said. I'll give you enough money to finish school somewhere far away. Or you can stay, and I'll protect those you care about. I knew it was a test. I knew staying meant stepping deeper into a world filled with danger. But I pictured Nicholas and Mrs. Patel and the terrified look she'd wear if strangers asked her questions about me. That's not a real choice, I said quietly. You knew I wouldn't leave. James's eyes softened for a brief second, just long enough to make my heart ache. 3 months later, my life was nothing like it used to be. My nursing program had been rebuilt entirely around Blackstone resources. Nicholas trusted me, the staff respected me, and James, he watched me in ways that made my breath catch. But it all came crashing down one morning when James stormed into the kitchen, his expression like ice. Bring the car, he ordered his team. We move now. He looked at me. Donovan's men kidnapped Mrs. Patel. My vision blurred. No, she has nothing to do with this. She is connected to you, he said, and that makes her a pawn to them. Fear rose in my throat, but James stepped close, lowering his voice. We'll get her back, he said. I'm taking you with me. Why? I whispered. Because you're the only one she'll trust when we find her. My world tilted, my pulse raced. My life, my safety, my heart. Everything was tied to this man. And I had no idea how much deeper I was about to fall. The drive to the warehouse felt unreal. My hands trembled in my lap, but James sat beside me, calm and focused. His jaw was tight, his eyes sharp, and every few seconds he checked the weapon holstered beneath his coat. I had seen him angry before, but this was something different. This was personal. They took her because of me, I said, my voice breaking. Mrs. Patel doesn't even know your world. She's just a kind woman who gave me food when I couldn't afford any. James turned his head slightly. And that is exactly why we're getting her back, he said. She is innocent. Donovan crossed a line. The warehouse sat at the edge of the industrial district, surrounded by empty lots and rusted fences. It was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that told you something was waiting inside. When the car stopped, James handed me a small device with a blinking light. If anything happens to me, press this. My team will come in full force, he said, but your focus stays on Mrs. Patel. Do you understand? I nodded, even though my whole body felt frozen. We slipped inside through a side door. The warehouse smelled like dust and old metal. Shadows covered everything, broken only by thin strips of sunlight leaking in from cracked windows. James moved with careful steps, and I followed his exact path, afraid of making even the slightest sound. Finally, we found her. Mrs. Patel sat tied to a chair in a small office room. shaking but alive. The moment she saw me, tears filled her eyes. "Harper, child," she whispered. "They came looking for you." I rushed to untie her while James stood guard at the door. His body was tense, every muscle ready. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. "Get her out," he said. "Now." "But what about you?" I asked. "I'll hold them off," he said, not taking his eyes off the hallway. "Harper, don't argue. Save her." The fear in my chest twisted into something sharp and painful, but I nodded. Supporting Mrs. Patel with one arm, I moved her toward the exit as quickly as I could. Gunshots rang out behind us, loud enough to shake the walls. Mrs. Patel whimpered, "Is he?" Quote, "He's fine," I said, even though I had no way of knowing. "Keep moving." We made it almost to the exit when a figure stepped into our path. Michael Donovan. His smirk made my stomach twist. "So this is Blackstone's new weakness," he said, raising his gun toward me. "And his little neighbor, too. How touching." My breath froze, but I stepped in front of Mrs. Patel. "You won't shoot," I said, my voice steady even though fear wrapped around me like ice. "You want leverage. Killing me won't give you that." His eyes narrowed, surprised by my confidence. That single moment of hesitation was all that was needed. A shadow moved behind him. Fast. Silent. James. Before Donovan could react, James had a gun pressed to the back of his head. "You threatened my son," James said. His voice was low, deadly, and filled with a fury that made the air crackle around us. "You took an innocent woman, and you targeted someone under my protection." Donovan stiffened. "That earns consequences," James added. Moments later, the rest of his men were dealt with, and Donovan's threat ended right there in that warehouse. Back in the car, Mrs. Patel was taken to a private medical facility, with guards posted outside her room. She would be safe now. When we returned to the mansion, the staff hurried Nicholas away so he wouldn't see the tension radiating off both of us. James led me into his study, shutting the door behind us. He didn't speak at first, he just looked at me. Really looked at me. His eyes were dark with something emotional, something raw. "You put yourself in front of a gun," he said quietly. "Why?" "Because she was innocent," I whispered, "and because I couldn't lose someone else because of me." Quote, he stepped closer. "You thought I would let them take you," he said, "but I didn't. I won't." His voice grew lower. "You don't understand what you have become in my life, Harper." My heart beat so hard I felt it in my throat. "You could have traded me to protect Nicholas," I said. "It would have been the logical choice." His jaw tightened. "Nicholas is my son. He is my world. But you—" He stopped, searching my face. "You showed me a kind of strength I didn't think existed. You walk into danger without hesitation. You fight for people who have nothing to offer in return. That kind of heart is rare." He stepped even closer, and the space between us felt charged with something I had been trying not to feel for weeks. "I asked you to stay for my son," he said, "but now I'm asking something else." He reached out, gently cupping my cheek with a hand warm and steady. "Stay for me." My breath caught. His eyes held mine with a depth that made the rest of the world fall away. "This house wasn't a home," he whispered, "until you walked into it." Quote, in that moment I realized something I had been fighting since the night I found Nicholas unconscious in the snow. I wasn't just part of their world now. I belonged to it. And I belonged to him.